When I was about 12 years old, my mom finally started trusting me enough to let me stay home alone. So naturally, this had to be around that age. We live in a peaceful little town that's pretty much safe and quiet, wide streets, big yards, friendly neighbors, and a charming village filled with shops and restaurants. You really wouldn't have to be looking over your shoulder walking by yourself at night. It just feels safe, which is partly why my parents felt comfortable leaving me alone at such a young age. I still live with my parents in the same house today. That night was a weekend, and my parents were leaving me home solo for the night. When I was little, my grandparents used to watch my sister and me, but since she wasn't home that evening and I was old enough to be left alone, they decided to trust me. My parents had us young, so they've always been pretty active. They'd often travel or go out with friends on weekends. They left me some money for pizza, so I knew it was going to be a pretty chill night, just me, the house, video games, and pizza. I used to be obsessed with James Bond games as a kid, especially Nightfire on my PS2, and I was on my third playthrough when I finished the game again. After that, I decided to order some pizza. There was this place right by our house called Gianni's, closed now, but it was a go-to for my family. At 12, I could easily devour 3 slices myself, so I ordered a regular pie. My mom told me to wrap the leftovers in foil and put them in the fridge. So I switched discs on my PS2 and started playing another James Bond game called Agent Under Fire. I liked it, but not quite as much as Nightfire. Hours drifted by as I played. It was probably around 11 p.m. when the doorbell rang. Thinking it was my parents, I rushed downstairs with the $20 bill my mom left me. She told me to tip $4, which wasn't bad for a 3-block delivery back then. When I answered the door, the guy was probably in his 30s, looked a little rough with a long, scraggly beard, and he wore glasses and a black trucker hat. I handed him the 20, asked for change, and he counted out the money, then looked up at me, then passed me into the house and asked, "You alone here?" I knew that was an odd and kinda creepy question, especially since my parents weren't home yet. My parents had drilled into me to be wary of strangers, so I didn't exactly feel comfortable. I replied, "Yeah, my parents are on their way back," which honestly was pretty dumb in hindsight. I could have just said no. But I think he was asking because, first, there were no cars in the driveway, and second, a kid was accepting a pizza at the door instead of an adult. Anyway, after he handed me the change, I shut the door, ate about 3 slices sitting in the kitchen, then wrapped up the rest and put them away. I went back upstairs, fired up another James Bond game, Agent Under Fire, which I liked less but still enjoyed. Hours went by, and around 11 p.m. the doorbell rang again. I thought it was my parents, so I hurried downstairs calling out Mom, Dad, but there was just silence. Still thinking they might be back, I said through the door, "Mom, Dad," and then I heard a strange voice say, "Hey, I need help." My stomach tightened as I realized I wasn't familiar with the voice, and I asked, "Who is this?" But all I got was the same answer: he just needed to use the phone. I was honestly scared stiff and decided to go upstairs and ignore him, knowing instinctively that opening that door would be a terrible idea. As I was climbing the stairs, which are right in front of the door, I heard it bang again, followed by the voice pleading, "Wait, please, I need help." That meant he saw me there. Through the glass at the top of the door, he was watching me. Even though it was dark outside on the porch, I could still see his shadowy outline. He was just staring back at me, no blinking, no movement, and he looked downright sinister. I sprinted upstairs, ran into my parents' room, and grabbed the house phone, the only one upstairs. I immediately dialed my mom's cell. I didn't know my dad's number at that age, but I knew my mom's. Her voice sounded kind of tipsy from a few glasses of wine, and I quickly told her someone was at the door asking to come in. That sobered her up instantly, and her tone shifted from casual to serious. She sounded loud and full of concern. She asked if I had spoken to the man or let him know I was alone, and I told the truth. I had answered, and I'd asked who he was. Her voice grew even more anxious as she asked if anyone else knew I was home alone. I immediately thought of the pizza guy. I told her he asked if I was alone, just like I said. Around that same time, the doorbell rang 2 more times. I panicked and told my mom, saying that guy still wouldn't leave. She ordered me to stay inside the room, keep the door locked, and said they were calling the police. She kept me on the line while they called the cops from my dad's phone outside the restaurant itself, called the police, because they had to leave and go outside to coordinate better. It was a summer night, windows cracked open to let some air in, and I could hear the backyard gate creak open, soft and slow, as if someone was sneaking in. I told my mom, and she kept telling me to stay quiet, stay in the room, turn the lights off. I whispered, "What if he tries to get in through the den window?" But she kept telling me to be quiet and just wait for the cops. She kept giving me updates over the line about their ETA and told me not to talk. I was starting to settle down a little bit when I heard footsteps inside the house, slow, deliberate footsteps upstairs, wandering around. I whispered frantically into the phone, telling my mom. She screamed into the other line, probably at the police, "The man is inside the house. Hurry." Her voice broke through the line. She told me to hide under the bed and stay there until police arrived, the most terrifying moment of my life. The only thing protecting me, a tiny lock on my parents' bedroom door. I heard the intruder coming up the stairs. That's where my sister and I shared a room, down the hall from my parents' bedroom. Then the footsteps stopped outside the door and I held my breath, hearts pounding. The intruder tried to turn the doorknob. It was locked, of course, and then there was some light knocking, but he didn't speak. He tried the knob a few more times. Then I heard him walk back down the hall and away down the stairs, fading farther into the house. I held back tears, too scared to make a sound. My mom told me the police had arrived, but for a moment I was convinced they'd burst in any second. Instead, I just heard heavy footsteps and a man proclaiming himself as a police officer, loud and clear. They came upstairs, and finally I was told I could answer and unlock the door. When I did, 2 officers appeared upstairs, then 2 more down in the living room where the back door and sliding window stood wide open. That's how he got in through the back, which was unlocked, and the window was left open, an obvious entry point. I explained everything to the officers about the man outside, thinking I was home alone, the pizza guy, everything, with my parents on the phone listening. They said they'd do their investigation, and by the time my parents got home, only 2 officers stayed, filing a report including the pizza guy's description. They told us they'd seen trouble with squatters and sketchy people in those woods before, but we never got any real answers. No footprints, no signs of entry, just an eerie silence after the police left. We didn't go back to that house for a while, but I swear sometimes, late at night when I wake up, I still see that face. That menacing, deranged look he gave me through the window. We don't talk about that night much anymore, and I don't think any of us have gone back to South Carolina since.